Ahoy! House ownership in New World is a very interesting topic because it comes with a few different benefits. For example, you can get additional effects by using trophies, but also you can get a way to fast travel without using Azoth, or with using Azoth but a very limited amount. The way that works is you can fast travel to your house for free. By default, I think the cooldown is currently 4 hours. And if you want to fast travel to your house again within the same 4 hours, then you can reset the fast travel cost for a much cheaper price than it would normally be to travel to a town. And today I want to talk a little bit about what I think are good or ideal locations to have your houses and have your inn set up in order to fast travel around the map. Now, I have to say beforehand, this is of course personal preference. You can put your houses wherever you want to, but this is something that I think is an effective way from how it looks like at launch. Where you want to have your houses also depends on your leveling pace, so we'll look at that a little bit. And we have two different maps. So this is the New World map.com map, which we'll look at a little bit in more detail because we need to look at some specific zones. And then here, if I can show it, we also have a little other map that is just the map itself, which we can use in order to mark some things. This is mapgenie.io and then /new world. So this is the secondary map that we're going to be using. Now, let's first go back to the other map. I have to switch between them a little bit here and there and have an overall overview of the map real quick to get a basic idea of how this works. So you have your beginning territories down here. That's Everfall, Monarch's Bluff, Windswood, and First Light. So these four here. They are all in a level range from level 1 to 25, and they are your main hub in the beginning. You have a few forts here, you have a few towns here, and you have a few dungeons here as well. After that, you move up to Brightwood and then down to Cutlass Keys. Those are like your next level areas. Then you move a little bit over here to Weaver's Fen. And then you basically make your way up here, Great Cleave, Restless Shore, Morningdale, those are the areas you're looking at. And then the late game areas that you'll be looking at are Eden Grove, Shattered Mountain, even Ebonscale Reach, and Reekwater. So those four places all across the map here, basically. So you somehow want to cover the ground here in a preferable way with your houses, in my opinion, while also making sure that you have a good long-term investment. So the first house that you get, in my opinion, should be either in Everfall Town, or in Windswood Town. And we're going to pull up our little marker here very quick on the other map, and we'll just mark one of those. So I prefer Windswood a little bit for a few reasons that we'll get into a little bit later. Which one of the two you prefer is completely up to you. Maybe you make this green. So this is where initially you'll have your inn set up, probably in one of them, depending on where you start as well. And I think this is where you want to have your first house as well. The reason being that you will always return to these places sooner or later. They are great areas to get low-level resources. They are great areas to have a central hub to store most of your things, because it's like the main place for trading. Both of these places are used for trading. Windswood, in my opinion, is a bit preferable because this is where a lot of 1v1s go on in front of the town. I haven't seen that as much in front of Everfall, so if you like duels, Windswood is probably preferable for you. Windswood is also a bit of a bigger initial hub because you have Emrine here, the first dungeon, whereas Starstone isn't as mandatory. Emrine is something everyone has to do at some point for the quest line. Starstone is just more of a nice addition, basically. So I think in that regard it's great. And it's also obviously very central. I get the access that you have from Windswood to Cutlass, especially as well, because I really like Cutlass as an area. You can easily get to Monarch's Bluff, you can easily get to Everfall, and later on you can relatively easily get to Reekwater as well if you want to. So that would be my first house, but it doesn't have to be. You can also just keep your inn here and have your first house somewhere in the other territories that you move up towards. There are some benefits in terms of buying a more expensive house first because you get the bigger discount. That's on the taxes as well and stuff. So yeah, there's a little bit of flexibility there. I personally like having that house relatively early, just to be able to like put trophies in it and stuff as well if I want to. And I like Windswood for that. Again, Everfall, very much a great location as well. Not that much of a difference between them. And when it comes to later stages, there's also reason for both again. Then, in between, if you want to, if you're a slow leveler, you can of course put one of your houses anywhere here. You can put one into Brightwood, for example. You can put one into Morningdale. You can put one, I think, yeah, Wrestle Shores has some houses as well, I think. So yeah, you can definitely consider if you wanna put a house in one of these areas at some point. But the problem that I see with these areas up here, all of them really, is this entire area here, this little moon shape basically, is stuff that you will not need that much in late game. You might occasionally need it to get like in between resources if you're leveling a specific crafting perk, but you won't really get that much out of, say, having something in Morningdale late game, because there is not that much in Morningdale. We can have a look here. I'd like to show you that. If we go on areas, then we can see the areas which have any sort of like high level PvE content. And this is kind of relevant. So if we look at Morningdale, then we actually have some corruption stuff going on here, some group stuff, but it's all level 50. And that's not going to matter for you once you are level 60. Like, sure, you can solo it maybe, and then you can do that. But beyond that point, not really important. Whereas if you look at Great Cleave, for example, you have level 60 areas here. Look at Shattered Mountain, you have level 60 areas here. Look at Eden Grove, you have a bunch of level 60 stuff going on around here, and you have the Garden of Genesis. Now the problem is, these territories up here all don't allow you to buy houses there. They all just have outposts, and they don't have any actual towns where you could buy a house. So what I would suggest is using one of these to put your inn in late game. Now, which one you choose is kind of up to you. There are a few reasons to choose different ones. I wouldn't put mine into Great Cleave because, as you can see, if you look at the levels here, a lot of it is level 40 stuff, level 50 stuff, and only just this one area, which is really level 60, which you can get to from Shattered Mountain as well if you want to. But for example, if you like to go Garden of Genesis a lot, then Valarhold is probably a pretty good place to be because it's like a relatively short way to go there. But if you look around Valarhold, there again aren't that many high level things to go to. On the other hand, if you go to Mountain Rise, the travel over here is still relatively short. You can use the fast travel point if you want to. And then you're much closer to all the level 60 areas up here that you definitely will farm at some point. The new quest chain for the main quest probably leads you there as well. There are some high level chests with a longer cooldown and everything. So this is an area you want to be in. Technically, I would say Mountain Home is even better because it's even closer to all of the high level areas. But again, if you want to go to Gardens of Genesis as well, then Mountain Rise is a little bit closer. So between those 4 points, it's kind of up to you which one, you think is most important, which one you do most often. I think I personally would go for Mountain Rise or maybe Mountain Home, and then just fast travel over here if it comes down to it. But yeah, very flexible. But I would put my inn into one of these places up here. So we're going to do that just now. We're going to have a look at the other map again. Inn, so we make the inn yellow, I guess. And I will put mine here. So we have our inn and we have our first house so far. But that leaves us to other houses that we still have to place somewhere. And that is what we're going to do right now. So what we have left is a relatively large area that we want to cover here, because you can see Ebonscale Reach has some level 60 areas as well. In my opinion, Dynasty Shipyard will also be worth farming to some degree, just because you will just have more people doing it. It's easier to get to in some cases. If you don't have keys for the other ones at any point, then you can just go Dynasty for some extra farm. There will probably be people doing the high level PvP quests here because they give higher rewards as well. It's a lot easier to farm that. So I think Ebonscale Reach is a relatively great place to do things. But on the other hand, Reekwater is the same thing, right? You have level 60, 65 areas here as well. I think that's some of the highest level loot actually that you can like solo farm decently in this area, if I recall correctly, even though it is called Area for Group. And obviously you have the Lazarus Instrumentality here, which is one of the other high level dungeons. So An easy way to go about this is just to say, okay, when we reach high level, we want to have all of our territories in level 60 areas. In that case, we just go, say, one home in Evanskill Reach, which coincidentally is also really pretty. And we have one home in Reekwater. Now, this is definitely an option, and this is what I am currently thinking of doing. The problem is that you don't really have perfect map coverage, right? Because Reekwater and Windswood are not that far apart, and you could technically get over there relatively easily if you wanted to. If you want to like min-max every travel path, then there might be better options. But I think this area up here, this entire, let's mark that in red. This entire area is what you really want to cover in late game. This is very easily covered by having that yellow spot here, basically. And then Evanscale kind of, connects to Great Cleave as well, but I wouldn't want to walk that far. So in order to cover the other level 60 area, we definitely want to have something here in Evanscale. And then on the other side, Reekwater, we most certainly want to have access to as well. So what we can technically do at this point is move our Windswood spawn somewhere else. We can move our Windswood home. But again, I think Windswood will stay a hub for a very long time. I think it'll be where a lot of the trading will be happening, a lot of the gathering if you ever need any low-level resources, a lot of the PvP-related stuff, like a lot of the duels, and I think there will actually be a decent amount of fighting going on in this area always as well. So I think this area is still a decent one to have an additional spot in as a trading hub. If you absolutely don't want that, I guess you could go up to Morningdale, for example. You could potentially go to Restless Shore as well if you want to, I don't know, run the 45 dungeon or something. But really, again, all of this that is in between here is stuff that you don't really need to cover in late game. Likewise, Monarch's Bluff, I guess you could go to, but then again, you have Evanscale, you can go down there. Everfall is just an alternative version to Windswood. You could go Everfall, it would end up being the same thing. And Cutlass Keys and First Light, you really don't need much from in late game unless they additionally increase the number of dungeons available and give us high-level dungeons there at some point. So yeah, I think between those, you kind of cover everything in a relatively ideal way. There used to be the campfire spawn strategy as well, where you could put your campfire somewhere else to travel around. That doesn't work anymore because it is now in a 500 meter range, radius around the campfire, so it's not really worth using that for anything for travel, in my opinion. And I think this is pretty good coverage. Keep in mind that in late game you will relatively easily get Azoth anyways, so it's not like you're gonna miss out on like tons of Azoth. You're gonna lose out on tons of Azoth if you have to travel a little bit to Cutlass sometimes. The other thing that is definitely worth keeping in mind, outside of just travel efficiency and all, is if you have any territories owned. If you have a company that can consistently hold a territory for a long time, then you may not need, for example, the point in Windswood here. You may just be like, okay, my company owns that always. I can just fast travel to Reekwater, fast travel over there super cheap, and it's not going to be important, and I can put it somewhere else. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily rely on that because most territories don't get held forever. They get, competed over to a degree that you may lose them. And when that happens, then you'd have to you have to trade over your houses again just to get that, which could be a bit annoying. So I think you want to have like a stable hub. But again, this is something you primarily do in late game. If you want to do something else while leveling and you want to, for example, put a house in Weaver's Fen, let's just put that in another color. We just put that in white. So for example, Weaver's Fen I think is a pretty decent location while leveling because it's kind of connected to Brightwood, it's connected to Morningdale, it's connected to Restless Shore. So if you're looking to buy a house early and you have the gold, you have done some auction house trading, basically, some trading post trading, then something like this can be considered. But again, once you get to the super high level areas, a lot of them don't even have any option to travel there. Great Cleave is one of those, Eden Grove, Shattered Mountain, all don't work. And then the other thing we also have to keep in mind is that there are the expansion areas. So we can already see that the map kind of goes on. Let's try and follow along, like kind of like in all of these areas, right? And that is kind of covered pretty well. If you have your inn in Shattered Mountain, you can go anywhere up here. And you have a house in Arenscale Reach, which will go right over here. So even when expansions come out, you'll be covered pretty well for whatever may come in the future. And I think, or not even expansions, just like additions, might not be a full DLC, that, you know, you'll not run into any issues and miss out on any places that'll come there, because nothing around here seems to be happening in the future anyway, so I don't think it's really worth covering that areas to the same degree. And at some point you may want to move your house from Reekwater, for example, if the new territories open up, because it might not be worth as much anymore at that point, but that's for then. I hope this was a good overview. I hope this explained my current thinking with the houses, and if you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you get notified of other upcoming videos. I hope to see you for the next one soon. Duke Sloth, out.